Okay, pause, because the wildest thing that's happened so far in season 5 is not even a monster reveal. It's a moment where Will is in danger, the creatures are mid-charge, and then everything just stops, like someone hit pause on the upside down. His eyes go pale, the tech freezes, and then he does that nose wipe. Not a dramatic I'm dying thing, just that quick little gesture that the show has trained us to associate with psychic strain. And the second that happened, the internet basically stood up like, "Excuse me, what do you mean we all can do that?" And just to be crystal clear, I'm only talking about what's actually shown on screen in the episodes that are already out. Now let's talk about why TikTok is acting like it has a private investigator license. Alright, confession time. TikTok has turned Stranger Things into a full-time conspiracy job. You watch one clip and suddenly your For You page is yelling, "Eleven did this, Eddie is coming back, and someone is definitely dying." Like your phone personally pays rent in Hawkins and it's mad about the utilities. So today we are doing Stranger Things theories so dark they actually make sense. But with one rule. One. I'm separating what's actually confirmed on screen in the episodes that are already out from what's fan theory, symbolism, and pure internet spiral. Because some of these theories are fun, some are low-key genius, and some are just anxiety with barrel lighting. Quick spoiler note before we go further. Season 5 is being released in parts and right now only the first drop is out. So I'm going to start spoiler light, talking about the theories and why they spread. Then I will give you a very clear warning and we will talk about which theories got stronger or weaker after what we have actually seen in the first drop. If you haven't watched yet and you want to stay totally unspoiled, I love you, click off, seriously. Protect your brain. Okay, deep breath. Let's crack this open. Stranger Things theories get intense because the show is basically built to make your brain hunt for patterns. It's not random that people theorize like detectives. The writers love parallels. They repeat visual motives. They let characters say one little line that feels casual and then it comes back later like a haunted voicemail. And the Dungeons and Dragons names are a huge part of it. The kids use D&D as a way to label what they are dealing with, like a metaphor system. Not a literal rulebook, but it's absolutely a clue-style language. Also, releasing the season in parts is basically a recipe for maximum theorizing. Because people do not sit calmly with unanswered questions. They spiral, artistically, with charts and screenshots and word string. And here's a tiny alternative perspective, because I know someone's going to say it. It's just a show, let people have fun. True, totally. This isn't me shaming theories, I love theories. I'm just saying the internet will call something confirmed when it's really just my cousin's friend algorithm said so. And that's how we end up in chaos. Speaking of chaos, let's start with a theory TikTok would not shut up about. Before season 5 started dropping, if you type Stranger Things season 5 into any search bar, the next words were basically who dies. And here's what was factual at the time. Nobody outside the inner circle can confirm major death until episodes actually air. So a lot of those confirmed death leaks were not confirmed. They were guesses, rumors, misread interviews, or someone speaking with 300% confidence because confidence gets clicks. Now, why does this theory have legs even before we saw anything? Because Stranger Things has always played with the idea that the kids are the heart, but the world is not safe. As the story escalates, fans assume consequences will escalate too. Final season energy makes people nervous. It's like when your friend says, "We need to talk," and suddenly you are reviewing every conversation you've ever had. Same vibe. and TikTok keeps cycling through the same suspect archetypes for the same storytelling reasons. The protector archetype, the one whose whole job is keeping people alive. The guilt carrier, the one who's been holding the heaviest emotional weight. The one you can imagine sacrificing themselves because they don't believe they deserve a happy ending. And then the one that makes everyone panic. The character whose arc feels complete, because fans fear writers will treat completion like permission. Okay, here's the thing. A lot of who dies content isn't really about evidence. It's about emotional bracing. When we love characters, our brains try to pre-feel the pain so it won't hit as hard later. We'd rather predict heartbreak than get blindsided by it. And that's why people start building arguments like, this line meant this, and this scene was foreshadowing. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's just us trying to control an ending we can't control. And now that the first drop is out, it didn't calm anyone down. It made everyone more nervous, because the stakes are clearer. And that means the dead theories don't die, they multiply. And that leads perfectly into the next theory, because it's basically the emotional engine behind half of them. This theory always comes in two flavors. Flavor 1 is 11 started it accidentally. Like her powers plus the lab plus the experiments created the conditions for the upside down horror to spill into Hawkins. Flavor 2 is darker. 11 is the real villain. Or the softer version, 11 is the weapon that keeps getting pointed at the world. Now factually, what the show has made clear on screen across seasons is that 11 is a survivor of a system that treated children like tools. That's not even subtext. That's the story. And it matters because it changes how you read her. The show keeps circling a really painful question. If you grow up being treated like a weapon, how do you become a person? And TikTok grabbed that question and went, okay, but what if she never fully escapes that role? Here's why this theory spreads even if you don't buy the she's evil angle. Because trauma can make people feel dangerous. Not literally, emotionally. Like, I ruin everything. Or, I'm the reason bad things happen. Or, if I had been different, nobody would have suffered. 11 has been blamed, feared, hunted, and forced into situations where her power changes everyone's life. So it's really easy for fans to twist that into what if she is the epicenter? But here's the reality check that keeps it grounded. The story consistently frames 11 as fighting for choice. Fighting for humanity, fighting to be more than what was done to her. So the most emotionally coherent reading is not surprise, she's evil, it's she carries guilt and she has to stop letting guilt define her. I hate that this makes sense, but it does. Because guilt is a leash, and villains like Vecna love leashes. And speaking of Vecna-adjacent chaos, we have to talk about a fandom ritual that refuses to rest. Okay, Eddie. Specifically, Eddie comes back and becomes Cass. If that sentence means nothing to you, you are not alone. It sounds like a medieval allergy medication. Here's the fact side. Cass, the Bloody-Handed, is a character in Dungeons & Dragons lore connected to Vecna. That connection is why fans latch onto him as a template. Stranger Things uses D&D names as symbolism and shorthand, not as literal mechanism, but the show absolutely invites parallels. So why did people connect Eddie to Cass? Because Eddie's season 4 storyline has the exact ingredients that make fandom brains go feral. He's the outcast, he's blamed, he's hunted, he gets a redemption arc. His death feels heroic and tragic and emotionally loud. And he becomes a symbol. And when a character becomes a symbol, fans go, okay, but symbols come back. Then you layer in the Cass vibe. Cass is tied to Vecna. Eddie is tied to Vecna's season. Cass carries this whole idea of dark transformation and betrayal in a broader D&D mythos. So the theory machine goes, what if Eddie returns changed, corrupted, controlled, weaponized? Is there official proof that this is happening in what's currently out? No, that part is still theory territory. And I'm labeling it as theory because I'm not getting jumped in the comments by someone who watched one interview and thinks they are the Duffer brothers' personal assistant. But does it make psychological sense as horror? Unfortunately, yes, because the cruelest horror isn't someone comes back. It's someone comes back wrong. That's why people can't let it go. And also, alternative perspective number 2, because it's fair. Some fans don't want Eddie back at all because they feel like bringing him back would be cheapen his ending. That's valid. And it's exactly why the theory is so spicy. It splits the room. Now let's talk about the theory that isn't even supernatural and somehow that makes it scarier. This one is less plot twist and more the vibe is too specific to be accidental. People point to how Hawkins becomes a pressure cooker, how panic spreads, how authorities' figures fail, how rumors becomes reality, how adults weaponize fear, how quickly a community can turn on a teenager, a family, anyone different. And fans say, this isn't just supernatural horror, this is a social horror. And honestly, that's not even a theory. That's a reading. Stranger Things has always been about two monsters at once. The monster in the dark and the monster in daylight, which is human fear and the need to blame someone. That's why the show feels grounded even when the plot is portals. The emotional beats are real. Also, quick tangent, but it connects, I swear. This is why small town rumor horror hits so hard. Like you ever walk into a room and you can tell everyone just finished talking about you because the silence has a texture? That's Hawkins. That's the texture. Okay, back. Because right before a finale, there's always one last theory bucket that shows up like clockwork. This theory says the show might end where it began, either literally through time weirdness or metaphorically through cycles. The idea is the upside down isn't just a place, it's a wound, and wounds reopen unless you actually deal with what caused them. People tie this to the show's focus on time, memory, and trauma. And even if you ignore the sci-fi angle entirely, the symbolism holds up. Trauma repeats until it's faced. That's not paranormal, that's therapy. And if you're like, okay, but that feels too deep for Stranger Things, I hear you. But also, the show has always been more emotional than people give it credit for. It's just emotional with monsters. Now, we have covered the big theories lanes. Here's the part that ties everything together, and then we are going to talk about what got stronger after the first drop, because that's where things get juicy. The theories that make sense usually make sense because of psychology, not because of secret clues. People predict sacrifice because endings often demand it. People suspect 11 because trauma survivors carry guilt. People resurrect Eddie because grief wants a second chance. People blame Hawkins because fear spreads socially. People imagine loops because trauma repeats. So TikTok dresses it up in edits and eerie music and, oh my god, did you know this? But underneath it is something painfully human. We are trying to emotionally prepare for an ending we are not ready for. Okay, now, spoiler line, big bright line. If you haven't watched the first drop and you want to stay unspoiled, this is your exit. Seriously, go. I will wait. Not in a creepy way, in a supportive way. Okay, ready? Let's talk about why the theories got louder. So here's what we can say safely. Once real episodes are out, theories don't disappear, they mutate. Because now people aren't theorizing in vacuum. They are theorizing of scenes, choices, and cliffhanger energy. And based on the latest released episode, one moment poured gasoline on the entire fandom. The will scene. His eyes go pale, the attacking creature frees mid-charge, and then he wipes his nose in a way that visually echoes how the show often signals psychic strain. Okay, pause. Because this is exactly why TikTok went feral. That moment feeds three massive theory lanes at once. First lane. Will is evolving. If will can affect creatures connected to the Upside Down, that changes the chessboard. It turns him from a target to potential weapon or a potential key. And that's a scary change, because if you can affect the hive can probably affect you right back. Second lane, a hive mind control. This show has played with the idea of connection. So the second a character can freeze multiple creatures at once, fans go straight to, is he tapping into the network? And then they go one step further, because they always do, and ask, is he controlling it? Or is he controlling him? Third line, the 11 cost everything conversation remixed. Because if powers are showing up in unexpected places, fans start asking whether the lab, the Upside Down, and Hawkins were always on a collision course, and whether 11 was the trigger or just the first obvious signal. And this is also where the who dies panic spikes again, because new powers emerging plus escalating conflict usually means the cost is about to get higher. That's not a spoiler, that's just finale math. Also, I said earlier I'd come back to something, and I almost forgot, which is so on brand for me. Remember how I said the show trains your brain with tiny visuals? The nose wipe is one of those. It's small, it's easy to miss, but it's the kind of detail that makes fandoms loud because it feels intentional. That's why people don't let it go. Now, my take, before the internet fully combusts. The smartest move you can make right now, before the finale, is to stop trusting any video that says confirmed, unless it's quoting an official source or you literally watched it happen on screen. Because in this window between releases, the internet is going to confidently hallucinate, with receipts that are basically just wipes and a screenshot from 2017. And I say that with love, truly. Because I also love a dramatic theory. I just don't love misinformation dressed up like certainty. Okay, I want the comments to be a group therapy session, respectfully. Which theory did you believe the hardest before the season started dropping? Which one feels stronger after what you have seen so far? And which one do you now look back on like, why was I so confident? I was literally operating on vibes and iced coffee. Drop your pic and tell me why. And be nice, because some people are emotionally attached to their theory, like it's a family member they would defend in court. If you want more pop culture but make it psychological horror, hit like, subscribe, and send this to the friend who keeps texting you, wait, I have a theory at 2:30 a.m. with zero warning. And until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and do not let the internet turn your feelings into evidence. Because the finale is coming and I need all of us emotionally hydrated for what's next.